Hey, welcome back everyone. Let's talk about setting up Raspberry Pi in this session. At the heart of Raspberry Pi is the operating system. Okay, so just like we have Windows operating system for a computer, Windows computer, just like we have operating system for Mac. So basically, operating system is what drives any computer. So that's the one which actually talks to the hardware components and the applications. So similarly, for a Raspberry Pi, we have a operating system called as Raspian. Okay, so the latest version is called Raspian Buster operating system. So unlike a computer and Mac, in Raspberry Pi, what they do is they burn the image into micro SD card. So 16 GB is good to have, but to start off to testing, you can also start with 6 GB. So what we do is we basically burn the operating system into a micro SD card and we insert that into the slot provided in the Raspberry Pi. So that's what is actually runs the Raspberry Pi. So that's a cool thing about it. So we don't need to have a hard drive within the Raspberry Pi. That's why it makes it so small. And once we have the image burned into the micro SD card, it can be set to talk to the Wi-Fi or to any other external devices and we can boot up. So with that said, let me talk to you about the different step that needs to be done before we can start using the Raspberry Pi. The number one step obviously is going to be downloading the operating system. I'm going to show it to you in the next slide. And once we have that image, which is an ISO format, we need to burn that to the micro SD card. Basically, when I say burn means we need to load that into micro SD card. So for that, I'm going to use a software called Win32 Disk Writer. There are lots of softwares actually which you could use, but my favorite is Win32 and I'll be using that. And after that, we are going to format the SD card because out of the box, when you get the micro SD card, sometimes it needs to be formatted. Okay, or if you already have an existing SD card, it's always good to wipe out all the data and format it. And once we have the disk ready, we are going to write the Raspbian image into micro SD card using the Win32 32 disk writer. Okay, and once we add the operating system in the micro SD card, we are going to set up a headless setup. What I mean by headless, as I explained to you in one of the previous slides, is how to connect a Raspberry Pi to the internet and manually control the Raspberry Pi without having to connect an external keyboard, external mouse, or external monitor. That's what is called headless setup. And once we have the headless setup ready, we are going to connect the micro SD card to the Raspberry Pi and we are going to boot it up and we will be able to see the operating system. And once we have everything ready, it's always good to update the software and the configuration. Just like we do Mac OS update or Windows update, it's always good to keep the Raspbian image updated all the time. So that's what we call updating the software. And I'm going to show it to you step by step in the upcoming slides. Okay.